When I'm climbing, I feel strong and I feel powerful. I don't feel tiny or delicate. Climbing makes me feel alive.
Welcome to Momentum, a podcast brought to you by Team Canada. In this season, Watch This, we'll hear about the inspiring stories of some of the brave women of Team Canada as we look towards the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. I'm your host, Ariane Jones, and I competed for Team Canada in the sport of luge at the Sochi 2014 Winter Olympics. Having competed on the world stage, I know all about the highs and the lows that come with being an elite athlete, especially heading into an Olympics. I'm so excited to bring you stories from across the spectrum of sport and celebrate the incredible women of Team Canada together. In this episode, I'm joined by sport climber Alannah Yip. Alannah made her Olympic debut at Tokyo 2020, the very same games that sport climbing made its own debut. As one of the first athletes to compete in the sport at the Olympic level, Alannah and her fellow competitors had to navigate new rules as well as COVID regulations to bring sport climbing to the Olympics. At her first games, Alannah finished 14th in the women's combined event. More recently, at the 2023 Pan Am Games, Alannah won Canada's first ever sport climbing medal at a major games, claiming bronze in the women's boulder and lead event. Don't know what those terms mean? Don't worry. Alannah breaks down her sport for us during this episode. Alannah has always used her platform to advocate for change. Sport climbing has traditionally had a lighter is better attitude, which has led to a culture of disordered eating that she and others are vocal about changing. Alannah gives us a peek into her own journey on and off the climbing wall. After being diagnosed with alopecia at the end of 2023, Alannah made the decision to shave her head, face her fears, and enter the climbing gym bald. She and I speak about this experience and everything she's learned along the way. I really hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. The following episode contains mentions of disordered eating. Please take care when listening. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks for having me.
For somebody who doesn't know about climbing, can we start there for a moment? And can you explain in a nutshell how sport climbing works in the Olympics?
Different this time around. Competition climbing is a relatively new sport. It's only been around since I think the 80s. Tokyo 2020 was the first time that climbing had been in the Olympics. And that time around, climbing only got one medal event. So one medal for each gender and 20 athletes per gender worldwide. There are 3 disciplines of competition climbing: bouldering, lead climbing, and speed climbing. And our IFSC, the International Federation of Sport Climbing, decided they didn't want to play favorites. So instead of choosing one discipline, they decided to create this new discipline of just doing all 3.
Oh, wow. There's like, hey, these are 3 different sports. We're combining them into one.
Yeah. Which, there's definitely pros and cons of that. I'm really grateful that the world got to see the entirety of our competitive sport. But at the same time, just like a runner trying to do a 1 medal event of 100-meter dash, hurdles, and a marathon, you're not necessarily going to get the single best athlete in any one of those disciplines. That's a different story. And then it's still evolving, basically. We're still a very young sport. So in Paris, now coming up, we'll have 2 medal events. Speed climbing is split out into its own medal event, and then lead and boulder are their own medal event, but they're combined into one. And we have more athletes this time. There's 20 for each gender for lead and boulder, and then there's 14 for each gender. To back up even further, what are the 3 disciplines? So speed climbing, it's a 15-meter tall wall. It's got a standardized route up it, so every hold is the same. And it's designated where they are on the wall, so you can practice, you can have world records because it's the exact same wall every single competition when you go. And it's just about how fast you get to the top. There's 2 lines next to each other, and so there's 2 people racing.
Ooh, I didn't even know that. That's a cool element.
Yeah. And it's actually, I think it's the fastest sport in the Olympics because it's under Well, the world record is under 5 seconds.
Under 5 seconds. Oh my gosh, that is such a small time. I mean, I did luge, and so some of our tracks were under 45 seconds, and I thought that was a small amount of a sport, but under 5 seconds is a whole other ball game.
Yes. And then the other two, lead climbing is typically about a 15-meter tall wall as well, but whereas the speed climbing wall is just 5 degrees overhanging, the lead climbing wall is like 35 to 45, depending on the competition. And they put one route up the wall. So every round of every competition is brand new. The climbers have never seen it, never climbed it before. They don't get to watch each other. Everybody stays behind the wall and you come out one at a time. And it's just about who climbs the highest. You just get one try. And as soon as you fall or wait the rope, you're done. And you get 1 point per hold. So your score typically looks like 35. And that's on a rope. It's not a risky sport as much as people think it is.
Which is important to talk about these days, given how much press free solo got, right? You're like, I'm safe, I'm on a rope, I'm pushing the boundaries, but it's safe.
Yeah, so speed climbing is on a rope. It's 15 meters or 60 feet tall. Lead climbing is also 15 meters approximately or 60 feet tall, also on a rope. And then bouldering is not on a rope, but it's short. It's about 4 meters tall, and there are these thick foam mats underneath that you fall onto every time. So for bouldering, there's 4 climbs. Again, you've never seen them before. Everyone stays behind the wall and you come out to each climb. You're behind the wall and then your time starts. You get 5 minutes and you have to run to your climb, look at it, figure it out, climb it. Maybe you'll fall and you have to think, oh, maybe what did I do wrong? Rest a little bit and then try again. And you get 5 minutes to do as many attempts as you can. Then you run back behind the wall. You get 5 minutes of rest. And then you run to your second climb. And it just keeps going.
I think that's so interesting for people to know, because I feel like there's such a mindset component to climbing, right? That's what you just described. Not only are you putting your body through such a physical feat, but you're solving a puzzle at the same time with your body. So knowing that about the 3 disciplines, what's that everybody listening can go and cheer you on and watch you? What of those 3 disciplines are you what's your favorite one, or what's your strongest one?
Bouldering is my favorite typically, but I do bouldering and lead climbing. So, I mean, it's combined for Paris. So I have to do both. Bouldering is typically my favorite because you get multiple tries, but B, the boulders, typically the climbs are more dynamic and there's more of a problem solving challenge, which I think is pretty fun. It makes it so hard because the night before the competition, like the morning before the competition, even the minute before you go out to climb, you have no idea what's waiting you.
And that's really different than a lot of sports where a lot of athletes use visualization, right? You can visualize what the track's going to look like, what the course is going to look like. And you have none of that. You get to show up and literally, like you said, run out in front of your physical puzzle that you have to go do and solve the puzzle in the moment with everybody watching. That's very exciting. This was a little bit different for you because most athletes get asked the question like, oh, have you always dreamed about going for the Olympics? But as you mentioned, you competed in your first Olympics in Tokyo, and that's where sport climbing made its Olympic debut. So it wasn't in the Olympics before Tokyo. How did it feel when you realized that going to the Olympics was going to be a possibility for you in your sport?
I remember exactly where I was, actually. It had been talked about. We knew that the International Federation of Sport Climbing was in meetings, and they were trying really hard, pushing to get sport climbing into the Tokyo Olympics. And I was in the airport, I think it was Chicago. I was on my way to the World Championships in 2016 when it got announced that it was officially in the Tokyo Olympics. And I mean, I could and I couldn't believe it. It was like this whole kind of world got opened up. It was like, wow, that's huge. Like, the sport is going to grow. The sport is going to change a lot, but also like, wow, I could do that. I could be an Olympian.
It's cool because most athletes, let's take an example of running or swimming, right? Some athletes dream about that from when you're younger. And of course, for you in your sport, you're like, I'm climbing, but it's not in the Olympics. And I think that's such a special moment for people to understand that as an adult, like as an expert in your sport, all of a sudden this world was totally opened up to you, right? And you got to go and become an Olympian.
I was 16 when the 2010 Olympics were in Vancouver, so in my city. I got the 2 weeks off of school. So that was very exciting because I went to school in one of the cities that had some events. So everybody got the 2 weeks off to get to experience it. And it was so much fun. The atmosphere in the city, just walking around. Everybody was wearing Canadian flags and red. And it was so fun to see everyone so proud to be Canadian that week. But I think the most impactful for me was actually getting to go to the opening ceremony. I watched the entire athletes parade. I was transfixed. Like, I had been to multiple youth world championships for climbing before, but there was not even a sliver of hope that, or any thought in my head that climbing could ever be in the Olympics at that time. But I was just transfixed watching the athletes walk out into the stadium. Like, wow, they must be so proud right now. So proud to be wearing that uniform, representing their country on the world's biggest stage. Like, wow, that must feel amazing. I really wanted that experience. So at that time, that was something I really wanted, but also I had no hope of getting there. And I loved climbing too much to, just chase an Olympic dream in any, change sports and try to make it in some other sport.
Are there any lessons that you learned at the last Olympics or in the last 4 years since?
I think I've learned a lot about myself in the last 3 years. It's actually been quite a mental struggle for me since the last Olympics. I had all of this expectation that I put on myself. Now that I'm an Olympian, I should be this good. I should be doing this well in competitions. And there were, a number of reasons why I was not doing that well. And, a couple other things happening in my life that really crushed me mentally. And I spent 2 full competition seasons pretty much being pretty crushed. And every time I stepped out onto the mats to compete, I was a mess. So I think I did a lot of work mentally. And I think it started to really show at the end of last season when I got a bronze medal at the Pan American Games. Besides the medal, I think the important thing to me was that I felt amazing climbing out there. I felt like myself. I was happy. I felt powerful. And I felt, I had an amazing mindset that competition. And then I went through alopecia. And that has made me less self-conscious, which is a good thing. So I think stepping out onto those mats for the the first of the Olympic qualifying series, that's kind of what I'm hoping to bring there, is this attitude of like, this is me. I'm going to give everything here. I don't really care what you think about me.
Honestly, I think that I really appreciate you sharing not just the perfect highs, right? I think it's important that people understand that just because you went to the Olympics, like there was a hard journey on the other side of that. But knowing and seeing you talking about it right now of how you've come out that other side and the mindset that you have now from winning your bronze in Santiago to coming out the other side of some health struggles, feeling even stronger and having these silver linings you didn't even know were possible, it sounds like you're in just a perfect mindset. Just recently in January, you posted on Instagram about your recent diagnosis with alopecia. How has it felt to be vulnerable and real about this in a very public way?
It felt a bit cathartic in a way. I also didn't in a way, I didn't feel like I had much of a choice, or I knew it was something that I really wanted to talk about. It was pretty obvious. I was losing enormous amounts of hair, and then I decided to shave my head so I was going to be bald. Like, that's, anybody was going to ask me about that. It's a big change. I just wanted to get out in front of it, kind of, and explain to everyone what had been going on. I had a relatively short journey with alopecia. Most of my hair fell out in about a month before I decided to shave it. So most people didn't know, but it had been a month of a lot of mental struggle, but a lot of learning for me, learning about myself and making some big decisions about who I wanted to be, how I wanted to show up. And that was part of the reason that I decided to share my journey on Instagram.
It sounds like that's a very short amount of time to go through such a big change. And I'm sure it was a bit of a feeling like you were thrown off the deep end, it sounds like, in having to learn and decide how you wanted to show up through that.
I mean, it's something that I've thought about before, for sure, but my situation had changed, and it was kind of a cool experience because I got to kind of go through that process again, or it forced me to go through that process again. So it was good for me in that regard.
Yeah, I think I got that out of something that you wrote on Instagram, actually, if I can quote you. You wrote recently in your post, I thought it was so beautiful. You said, going into the climbing gym bald for the first time was really scary, but I did it anyways. I realized that I'm stronger than my fear and that no one else really cares about my hair. Climbing has given me huge appreciation for what my body can do and not just how it looks. That is such a powerful statement. I read that and I was blown away. And I think it's so important for more people and women and girls to hear. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So obviously I was at the beginning, when my hair started falling out, I was really, it was upsetting the whole time. You're brushing your hair, you're touching your hair, and it's falling out in your hands in clumps. It's going to be really upsetting. And I was really afraid to go into the climbing gym. I wanted to wear a hat all of the time, or I wanted to, keep my hair clipped up in a way that you couldn't really see it. But I was not climbing the way that I can. I guess I had it in the back of my head, oh, don't whip your head very fast because your hat will fall off and then people will see. It turns out that I'm the one who cares most about my hair. So I made the decision pretty early on that I was not going to wear a hat in the climbing gym after really talking to my sports psychologist about it. But I knew that it was not doing me I was not doing myself any favors by trying to hide it. I was not climbing as well. It was always in the back of my mind, be careful about your hair, your head, to be self-conscious about it. As soon as I made the decision to not wear a hat in the gym, it was this sort of it was a very empowering moment. I was like, I'm whatever, I don't care. So why should anybody else care? And if they care, it doesn't matter. They don't matter. What matters is how I feel about it. And this is going to make me feel good about it. And then the other part about body image, I think for a lot of women and girls, well, not just women and girls, men as well, I think in our culture, in our society, body image is can be a huge issue, especially when you're growing up. I definitely had big body image issues in high school. Part of the reason that I developed an eating disorder in my teenage years. Climbing is a strength to weight based sport, and then a lot of people talk about that very openly. And that led to some struggles for me when I was a teenager. So it's taken me a long time to come to this, but climbing has, or this mindset that I have now, but climbing has been probably the biggest part of my like healing from that. Because when I'm climbing, I feel strong and I feel powerful. I don't feel tiny or delicate. Like climbing makes me feel alive and it makes me feel strong. So
I think I even want to just mirror back to you that when you were just talking about the story about how when you were first struggling with your hair falling out and you're wearing a hat and you're in the gym and you're worried about that. One, as an athlete, that's the last thing you want to be. You need so much focus to perform at your top potential that taking away from that, that's not what you want. But I can even sense in your energy, right? It was kind of like low and you're talking about it and you're like frustrated. And then when you just shared about how you were like, wait a second, what do I care? I'm going to shave my head. Like, I'm going to show up to the gym. I'm going to feel really powerful in this. Your energy totally changed. And you came across, even as you just said, empowered, right? In yourself.
That's what I hope that more, women and girls, but just overall people in general can take away from sport is like not to do with hair loss and that, but feeling empowered and feeling appreciative of our body for what it allows them to do.
Yeah, focusing on what your body can do and how it can feel instead of just how it looks and even how other people think it looks. That's such a powerful shift. And I know that people listening to this, that's going to be really empowering for them to hear. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that message. To change lanes a little bit, something that, you've seen, we talked about how climbing has seen a lot of changes, right? We've seen a lot of changes within sport climbing throughout your career, including the debut into the Olympics in Tokyo. Have you seen climbing culture shift when it comes to gender representation and broader diversity?
Overall, yeah, absolutely. I think when I started climbing, ages ago now. So the first time I ever went climbing, I was around 6 years old, a really long time ago now. And I started competing at, I guess my first competition, I was 9, but like almost 10. So I was super lucky where I was on my youth team. It was one of only a few youth teams in Canada at the time, and definitely one of the best. And it just happened to be really close to where I lived. At the time, there were quite a lot of females on the team. Could have been close to 50%, but I don't remember. Maybe a little bit less, but surprisingly close to 50%, especially at that time. Like climbing has historically been quite a male-dominated sport and quite a white-dominated sport. But my team there was a very large representation of female, so much so that I remember having like quite a few older female role models and role models like on my team that I idolized some of these women. A good number of our team were also Asian. Like in Vancouver, it's sort of like almost 50-50, maybe white and Asian. And so I never felt out of place necessarily on my team. In general, nowadays, the climbers that I see represented in the gym and outside are way more diverse than when I started. The community as a whole, but we still have definitely work to do. It doesn't, like the breakdown of climbers doesn't necessarily look exactly like the breakdown of the population overall. I would say it's getting better, but it's still an expensive sport to get into. So there's definitely financial barriers and like a certain amount of privilege in that regard. It's moving.
As a proud Chinese Canadian, can you share with me a little bit more about your heritage?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm half Chinese on my dad's side. And my 2 great-great-grandfathers, one Alexander Kamyao, was the first Canadian-born Chinese person and the first Chinese person to be able to vote in Canada in the 40s when Chinese people were given the vote. My other great-grandfather, his name was Yip, and he was a pioneer in Chinatown, business person, and built the first brick building in Chinatown. Both of them worked on the Canadian Pacific Railway, which was in the late 1800s and early 1900s. A lot of Chinese people were brought over from China, essentially as slaves, to build the railway in BC. And I'm super proud that Juan Alexander Camus fought to be able to get Chinese people to vote.
That's an amazing heritage that you come from, and you can see the pride in your voice when you talk about them, as you should. Speaking of, you mentioned looking up to people and having people that were your role models. You've talked a bit about this online, but as a Chinese Canadian, why is representation in elite sport important to you?
I think representation in elite sport is important to me just because of looking back at baby Alannah, who wanted to see someone just like me to know that that was possible for me. So I guess without using those exact words, but as a young kid, I felt that representation was important. Other people must feel like me. So, I'm very proud to be a Chinese Canadian in elite sport.
Wow, what an amazing conversation so far. I didn't realize how fast sport climbing is. I really appreciated Alannah explaining the different disciplines within her sport. Like many of you, I personally didn't know a ton about sport climbing, and who better to hear it from than an Olympian? Personally, it really resonated with me when Alannah was talking about appreciating what your body can do for you and how you feel, instead of focusing on how you look. This is one of the most powerful lessons that sport teaches us. Alannah's openness about her experience with alopecia and overcoming her trepidation at re-entering the gym is something that I think many of us can relate to in some shape or form in our own lives. As we continued our conversation, I wanted to reflect on the importance of representation in sport. While the club she trained at growing up was quite diverse, historically, climbing has been a male and white-dominated sport. Let's hear why Alannah thinks representation is so important. For listeners who are not familiar with the rules and regulation or the culture of climbing, there's a lighter is better attitude in climbing. Can you tell me why this is a common attitude?
Climbing is a strength to weight based sport. If you think about it, you're always fighting gravity. Historically, the culture in climbing has been just reduce weight to get better at climbing. And they miss a lot of the entire other side of that equation, that you can also get stronger to be better at climbing. Getting stronger is a lot healthier for you than just dropping weight. People do it in an uneducated way and from a place that their body doesn't actually need or can afford to drop weight. So it turns into this very unhealthy obsession.
Do you feel like there's a gendered element of the lighter is better mindset?
No, not in climbing. Climbing, it seems like everybody, like it's definitely all genders that struggle with this.
You have been really vocal about this online, about your own journey with the lighter is better attitude. And you talk about REDS. So can you tell me a bit more about REDS, which stands for Relative Energy Deficiency, and how the culture of thinness at all costs increases that risk for athletes?
So relative energy deficiency in sport is a relatively new term coined by the International Olympic Committee in the last couple of years. And it's basically the evolution of what used to be called female athlete triad, which was menstrual dysfunction, so amenorrhea, disordered eating, and a low bone density. And they extended this for a number of reasons. Those are not the only three issues that happen from not eating enough. And it also doesn't only apply to females. So relative energy deficiency in sport is a term that encompasses basically anybody, or a syndrome that happens when you are under fueling for the amount of activity that you do. So it's not necessarily an eating disorder. There is that like differentiation to make, and it can be intentional or non-intentional, but there are wide-ranging effects, including on bone density and menstrual function, but also on your hormones, on your digestive system. You can go read the IOC consensus statements on it for more information. It basically, relative energy deficiency in sport, it is just expanding these definitions. And they did a bunch of research. The International Olympic Committee had many doctors do research on what the actual effects of this are. And
how has this affected your own journey, right? You grew up in a sport where no one was talking about reds and everybody was talking about lighter is better. Like you said, that just tagline of lighter is better in sport. Did you fall into that trap growing up in sport climbing?
I was actually pretty lucky that I think on my team, we were not as exposed to this lighter is better mentality. I definitely saw it in all the professional climbers and wondered why all of the professional climbers looked so thin. I mean, there's a couple of things here. I never thought that as a kid, this is also ties into that representation matters. I never thought that I could be a professional climber. Never. There was never a hope in my mind. So I never idolized the professional climbers the way that you might if you really desperately wanted to be one of them, because I never saw myself in them. So I think that worked out well for me in that regard. But I did develop an eating disorder in high school, but that was kind of for other reasons. I switched schools and felt very, very lonely. And it was like a controlling mechanism. So anyway, on my team, we were kind of spared from a lot of it in that regard. So I feel very grateful for that.
Do you feel like the sport has been adequately addressing that culture?
I think in the last few years, it's maybe not even years, maybe the last year and a half, the number of people addressing it or being vocal about it has grown to a point where it's starting to snowball. And I feel like everybody's heard of it now. We talk about it a lot more, but I still think there is a lot of that culture around. I think the important people have started to talk about it, but there's still this thought in the back of a lot of people's minds, and that, to climb their hardest, they just have to lose some weight. So I think it'll take a while for the culture as a whole to shift. But I have faith. I know a lot of youth coaches who are doing some really great work in this with their teams and are modeling some really great behaviors and great mindsets around this. So I think as that generation grows up, it's just going to get better and better.
Yeah, so you're seeing that promising change. And I know that you speak up about it so vocally, and you're such a role model now in the sport, even though you never thought you would be. You are now, right? As Canada's first woman to compete at the Olympics in sport climbing, you're now a clear leader within that Canadian climbing community. What is your vision for the future of women in climbing in Canada?
That's a big question. I mean, there's a couple things. So obviously, I hope that in the future, our female competition climbers are able to qualify for the Olympics and, World Cup finals. Actually, I hope that our depth of field grows. So just overall, the women in Canada get stronger, and we're better represented at the World Cups, on the international stage, in those semi and final rounds, at the Olympic Games, at these major games. So I hope our competitive side grows. But in general, I hope that more women and girls in Canada find climbing and fall in love with climbing for the same reasons that I fell in love with it. The problem solving, the how empowering it is. That feeling that strength and that connection with your body and how amazing that is. That is my number one hope.
That is so beautiful. And you 100% are leading the way. And you can feel confident that you are leading the way and paving the path there. One question for you to wrap up. Team Canada's focus leading up into Paris is all about bravery and how bravery can take different forms. Now, I think that listening to your story on how you're speaking up about issues that are important in your sport, even though it's hard, how you are sharing about your struggles with alopecia, and how it makes you feel strong in your body and makes you focus on what your body can do over just how you look, is so brave of you sharing all of that today. But what does being brave mean to you personally?
Being brave to me means being afraid, but doing it anyway. Fear is natural. Fear is normal. You're going to have fear. And bravery is accepting that and still doing it.
That is going to be so inspirational for so many people listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for being here, for having the fear and showing up anyways, for being brave, and for sharing your story with us today.
Thanks for having me. It was a great chat.
Alannah is such an inspiration, and I'm so grateful for our conversation. Sport has brought so much to my life, and it sounds like Alannah feels the same. Learning to appreciate the strength of both your body and mind is such a powerful lesson. I echo Alannah's wish that more girls, women, and Canadians will fall in love with climbing and with sport. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review. It's the biggest way you can support the podcast. To follow these athletes' stories and results as they compete in Paris and beyond, download the Team Canada Olympic app, visit olympic.ca, or follow Team Canada on social. To watch clips from all episodes of Momentum, subscribe to Team Canada's YouTube channel. See you next time.